Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. After remaining silent for a while, the enemies attacked again. However, their morale was greatly affected. This was especially so for those who had seen the Soul Engineers being wiped out. They moved extremely slowly. Unfortunately, not everyone from the enemy's troops had witnessed what had happened. Some of the soldiers that came from different directions burst up the mountain quickly. The sounds of soul cannons and soul rays being fired echoed repeatedly. With the milk bottles and their high morale, Juzi and her group resisted the enemy's advance to the greatest of their abilities. Lights could be seen shining from the mountaintop from afar. They reached all the way to the enemy's camp and caused intense explosive booms. A Soul Engineer's lethality on the battlefield couldn't be matched by Soul Masters at the same level. This was especially so against ordinary soldiers. Soul cannon shells landed amongst the enemy's troops and blew apart, releasing balls of intense light. The soldiers were completely blown apart. Blood spurted, and flesh was strewn all over the place. The explosive strength of a Class 4 Soul cannon could cause massive destruction within 100 square meters radius. Every blast was sufficient to kill tens of soldiers. While soul rays were weaker, they were more accurate. As they complemented the soul cannons, the death toll of the enemy rose beyond 500 in a matter of minutes. However, the repeated attacks also depleted the soul power of the Soul Engineers. The arrows the soldiers used were useless against these Soul Engineers. They couldn't do anything against the Soul Engineers once physical protective soul barriers were used to block them. The enemy's first wave of attacks was held off. Those on the mountaintop cheered. Juzi's calm command was very effective. She held the fort with Cuckoo at the center. They would rush to whichever side was under threat. They were both Class 6 Soul Engineers, the strongest after Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong on the battlefield. If their soul power were fully replenished, these 100 Soul Engineers could even hold off tens of thousands of soldiers. This was a massacre. However, that was because the enemy didn't have any tools that could overcome their soul tools, and had already lost the Soul Engineers that could have repressed them. Previously, they had been harassed by the enemy Soul Engineers. This had diverted too much of their attention, which diminished the effect of their soul tools on the enemy. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in surprise, "Look! Our reinforcements have arrived." Juzi gazed into the distance, and indeed, troops drifted into her view from afar. They were closing in from all directions. The sounds of killing resonated and shook the skies. Her strategy, bait the enemy before ambushing them, had finally succeeded. The enemy was caught at a loss, as they were surrounded by an even larger army of soldiers. However, a bright yellow flag was lifted high in the enemy's camp at this moment. A man leapt up and stood steadily on a huge steed. He waved the flag in the air, and his voice reverberated throughout the battlefield. "Men under the glorious Lord, listen up. I'm the eldest son of the glorious Lord and the heir to his position, General Zhao Yang of the Duchy. I'll lead everyone out of this danger. The commander of the troops at the top of the mountain is the fiancée of the Sun Moon Empire's crown prince. If we catch her, the enemy troops will immediately surrender. They won't dare to touch us. This is our only way out." As he spoke, the man leapt onto another huge steed. Holding the bright yellow flag high, he burst straight towards the mountaintop. "Protect the crown prince's wife with our lives." One young soul engineer shouted with all his might as he lifted his soul cannon. His eyes spurted with fire as he fired the soul cannon towards the enemy troops. Their morale was lifted to an unprecedented level. They were doing it for Juzi's bravery and their hopes of survival. It was just that none of them noticed that Wang Dong and Hu Yuhao had already opened their eyes at this point. They looked at each other, and Wang Dong said softly, "Crown Prince's fiancé." Hu Yuhao laughed bitterly. "I don't know anything about that. However, this sort of explains why she's so mysterious. No matter what, I owe her a favor today. As for the rest, let's just wait until the future." Wang Dong nodded his head slightly. "Do whatever you want." Hu Yuhao laughed. Even though he was surrounded by enemy troops, he realized that he wasn't nervous at all. It was because he had a brother and a partner that was willing to live and die with him beside him right now. Under Zhao Yang's call, the frantic rebel troops finally found their release. While the troops on the mountaintop needed to survive, so did they. They knew the consequences of being trapped by the Empire's troops. To survive, they needed to give their all. The intensity of their attacks soared. The heavily armored soldiers quickly reached the mountain slope with the help of steeds. They even gave up their weapons, instead choosing to lift giant shields that were each carried by 2 soldiers up the mountain slope. After all, this mountain slope was less than 200 meters high. The mountain didn't have any particular geographical advantage either. The troops were about to completely surround the Seoul engineers on the mountaintop. Although Seoul cannons were very powerful, they depleted one's soul power greatly. A Class 4 milk bottle couldn't last long. Moreover, Ju Zi and the others were also injured and fatigued. At this time, they relied on their will and courage to sustain themselves. The giant shields couldn't resist the attacks of Class 4 and above Seoul cannons. However, the destructiveness of the Seoul cannons was greatly reduced by the giant shields. The enemy troops were slowly making their way up the mountain. Move. I'll do it. Zhao Yang shouted. He was 36 this year. He was in the prime of his life. The glorious lord had rebelled and wanted to create a duchy because of Zhao Yang. If not for the fact that Zhao Yang was ambitious and the glorious lord's territories were like fortresses, why would the aging glorious lord who wasn't even a soul master make such a decisive call? Zhao Yang was a genius. Although he was a part of the Sun Moon Empire, he had never liked soul tools. He was more interested in developing his own abilities. He had inherited his mother genes and possessed a rather strong martial soul, the violent gold bear. He was already a soul sage even though he was just 36 years old. In terms of abilities, he was always the strongest among everyone under the Glorious Lord. The Glorious Lord was responsible for guarding the northern region of the Sun Moon Empire. His sudden uprising caused the empire to be caught at a loss. His explanation was also very simple. He just wanted to set up a duchy, and was even willing to double his tribute to the empire. He just hoped to receive its recognition. The Sun Moon Empire's emperor was plagued with illness, and had lost the sharpness he had once had. He didn't rush to use military force against the Glorious Lord, as he was afraid of the reactions such an action might provoke from the Heaven Do Empire and Star Luo Empire. However, the Crown Prince continued to take a hard stance, and labeled him as a rebel that needed to be killed. That was the only way to intimidate the empire's nobility that had been conferred land in the empire. Zhao Yang didn't retreat even in the face of the shockwave, resisting the shockwave forcefully. However, he was also stunned to discover that Cuckoo was still alive even after he flung the shields at her. 2 figures had appeared in front of her. The 2 giant shields were held steadily in the hands of a young man. The teenager simply stood there, but he brought immense pressure down on Zhao Yang. This pressure didn't come from his abilities, but from his spirit. Zhao Yang had once been to Radiant City around 6 years before, and met Xu Qianran there. At that time, Xu Qianran had left a deep impression in his mind. Right now, this youth exuded an aura that was exactly the same as Xu Qianran then, but even more impressive. Who was he? Zhao Yang was on the other side of the mountain previously, and hadn't seen his group of soul engineers being wiped out. When the news reached him, the Empire's army had already arrived. Zhao Yang didn't know that there were 2 strong individuals on Ju Zi's side that had wiped out his entire group of soul engineers. Yes, the person who had caught the 2 shields was Hu Yuhao. The shields were heavy, and flung with great force. However, they were thrown upwards, and their force was reduced with the distance. Moreover, Hu Yuhao had Wang Dong beside him. As they combined their Haodong power, and he unleashed his ultimate martial soul, it was easy for him to catch the pair of shields. The Ice Empress pincers grabbed hold of the 2 shields steadily. Hu Yuhao took in a deep breath. He knew that he couldn't hold back at this point, or they wouldn't survive. 4 white soul rings rose from his feet. The soul engineers around him were shocked. Those were all 10-year soul rings. Hu Yuhao flung the 2 shields back towards the enemy troops. His right hand covered his forehead, and he shut his eyes. A strange-looking ring of white started to rise from his head into the sky. Only Wang Dong, who had moved behind him and was pressing his hands against his back, knew that Hu Yuhao was covering his forehead to cover the light that came from the Eye of Destiny. The white halo rose around 10 meters before it started to spread over its surroundings. After that, the halo descended again. The white halo rolled almost 100 meters down the mountain. As it washed past the rebel troops, they all collapsed like cut wheat. After that, they rolled down the hill weakly. Only Zhao Yang was left on the battlefield now. That white halo also touched Zhao Yang, who felt a wave of weakness spreading through his entire body. He circulated his soul power at an intense rate, before he managed to maintain his fighting will and keep from being affected by this weakness. What soul skill was that? It wasn't a mass attack, but a mass control type soul skill. Enfeeblement. It was so strong that the soldiers couldn't even lift their own armor after being affected by it. Is he a control type soul master? Once their martial soul true body was activated, their entire body would turn into the form of the martial soul, and their powers would soar. The power of their original soul skills could possibly double. After reaching the soul sage level, a soul engineer would find it very difficult to defeat a soul master unless he had special soul tools. Zhao Yang's martial soul resisted half the effect of the spiritual shock. His head only rocked backward slightly, and he regained his awareness after some momentary confusion. Whether it was his body or his spiritual power, they were enhanced greatly along with his martial soul. However, his palm still struck air because of Hui Yuhao's spiritual shock. Hui Yuhao wasn't the only one fighting. A pair of dazzling bluish-gold wings flapped open behind him and pulled him backward. He shifted back by 5 meters and avoided his opponent's attack. Hui Yuhao's gaze was cold, yet calm. This was his first time fighting a soul sage and a martial soul true body. It was even a critical moment. However, he wasn't anxious. Rather, he was excited. He cultivated tirelessly so that he could challenge his limits and fight others who were strong. If he were alone, he would never be able to beat a 7-ringed soul sage, no matter how strong his twin martial souls were and what soul tools he had. However, he had Wang Dong with him now. Hui Yuhao shouted, "Get out of the way. Zhu Zi, stay back." As he spoke, his eyes shone with bright golden light. A pair of hands were also wrapped around his waist. Another shocking scene appeared once again. The bluish golden wings folded together in front of him, and the golden light that Hui Yuhao emitted became even brighter. The golden road amidst withering resplendence was exhibited once again. A blue, purple, and gold tricolored light was converted into a unique ray. This ray of light appeared on a path that Zhao Yang had to cross. Even a soul sage couldn't avoid this attack, as Hui Yuhao had his spiritual detection up to preempt him. The terrifying part of the golden road wasn't its offensive strength, but its ability to seal one's soul skills. Aren't you using your martial soul true body? Then I shall seal it. A soul sage was much weaker without his martial soul true body. Zhao Yang's shining golden body was engulfed by the golden road. He only felt a wave of scorching heat circulating through his entire body. When Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong teamed up to fight Jing Ziyan and Ji Juechen, they didn't unleash the golden road fully. After all, they were only sparring. Right now, Zhao Yang was the first to experience the complete version of the golden road after Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's abilities had increased. An astonishing scene was instantly revealed. Zhao Yang's pace dipped considerably, and the golden hair on his body was melting at an alarming speed. The golden light that was shining from his body also became much brighter. Hui Yuhao took in a deep breath. After this series of battles, he was also greatly spent. However, he had no intention of resting at this point. If Zhao Yang was allowed to unleash his full abilities, everyone on the mountaintop would die. Wang Dong, it's up to you now. The radiant butterfly goddess initially had front and back wings only. However, there was an extra emerald middle wing now. It was smooth, bright, and translucent. A thick aura of life exuded from it, the essence of it composed of light and water. This aura of life complemented the aura of light. The dazzling butterfly wings opened wide. The tricolored light seemed to shine with other colors now. There seemed to be countless beads of water on the wings reflecting the light. As the light shone, layers of frosty gas were released from the figure's feet, accentuating the elegance of her slender figure. As the frost spread, her surroundings seemed to turn into a world of ice and snow. The icy chill also catalyzed shocking changes in Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao's fused body. A tall, thin figure appeared in the tricolored light. It was a lady, a young lady that seemed to have matured. She was more than 1 meter and 80 centimeters tall. Her slender figure was also very captivating. She had long, pinkish blue hair that flowed all the way down to her legs, but her eyes were bright gold. Even perfect was insufficient to describe her captivating figure. Her ravishing beauty overshadowed all the women present. Every streak of light complemented every curve of her body. No one could describe how they felt when they first saw her. However, everyone's attention was drawn to her the moment she appeared. She moved in the next moment. Her slender figure reached into the air, and her tricolored wings beat to propel her upwards. Thick icy fog spread from her legs, turning into streaks that surrounded her body as they rose. A ray of sunlight fell from the sky and shot straight towards her. A golden halo served as a foil for the birth of a goddess in the light. She danced in the air. Every step she took was gentle and perfect. Her captivating looks were filled with the sparkle of life and hope. Her wings were a perfect embellishment. As she soaked in the warmth of the light, she danced to the raiment of light. She danced alone within the icy fog, as she faced the frightening violent gold bear. Her tricolored wings extended and retracted, underlining her elegance. On her forehead, a subtle golden rune appeared. However, no one could see it as she danced faster and faster. As the golden rune flashed, it emitted a gentle glow. The intense undulations of spiritual energy caused her to enter a magical state. Yes. This was Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong's last soul fusion skill, a solitary dance amidst the frost, raiment of light. The lady formed by the raiment of light was the same as the one during the Elite Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. Everyone was stunned when they witnessed her ravishing beauty. Juzi was always very confident in her appearance. However, she lowered her head unwittingly at this point. She felt slightly inferior. The goddess of light suddenly said, "You're reluctant to bask in sorrow, yet you desire to accompany it for life. Start afresh and advance." The goddess of light smiled and raised her index finger to intercept the violent gold bear's huge palm. "No." The soul engineers atop the mountain and the soldiers rushing up the mountain all shouted simultaneously. None of them wanted such a perfect goddess to perish like this. Even Zhao Yang's bare palm slowed slightly. However, he still struck with full force. If he didn't kill Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong, he'd die instead. The instant that the huge bare palm and delicate finger collided, the goddess of light's index finger suddenly turned a strange color. It was still golden, but it was now somewhat translucent. Her entire right hand seemed to have suddenly become a golden crystal. It was such a beautiful scene that it was even suffocating for those looking at it. This crystal-like finger managed to resist the huge bare palm. Splat. Blood spurted out from the back of the bare palm. Zhao Yang screamed in pain. A hole was formed in the middle of his palm by the crystal finger. The goddess of light brushed her left wing and viciously struck the violent gold bear in the waist. He staggered a few steps to the side after he was hit, and a wound that was 3 feet wide and several inches deep was formed. The goddess of light's right hand was extremely strong. Her finger contained the soul skill of Wang Dong's broken devil of light right arm bone. All its power was focused on a single point. After the enhancement of the raiment of light, this destructive finger was the strongest strike Wang Dong could muster with his current abilities. Zhao Yang was in deep trouble as he tried to withstand the attack. As the goddess of light's wing struck Zhao Yang aside, a cluster of golden light was released from her body, engulfing him. Something weird occurred. The blood that had spurted out from Zhao Yang's palm seemed to have frozen and landed on the ground with a thud. Zhao Yang's body also turned rigid. There seemed to be a layer of frost covering his body. After this, the goddess of light struck out with her left hand. Her left hand was also golden, but the glow from it was different from the transparent gold that was emitted from her right hand. It resembled golden flares that burned, and these golden flares were icy cold. The golden light fog was the product of Wang Dong's soul power and Hu Yuhao's domain of perpetual ice. It fused the power of light and ultimate ice. Her left hand was the fusion of Wang Dong's golden light left arm bone and Hu Yuhao's ice empress pincer. It seemed to be drifting in the air, but it was the strongest strike of the goddess of light after their abilities had improved. The tremendous pain caused the violent gold bear's eyes to turn blood red. He turned around, and his body shone with bright golden light. His sixth soul ring flashed, and a gigantic projection of a giant bear instantly appeared behind his back. This gigantic projection burst forward, and his left arm doubled in size once again. His hair also turned dark golden. This was Zhao Yang's strongest offensive soul skill, the dark golden terror palm. This palm tapped into the shred of the dark golden terror claw bear's lineage in the violent gold bear. As it was used by his martial soul true body, it was also his most destructive skill. Golden flares were already burning. The goddess of light's aura changed again. The sovereign's descent turned her sanctity into superiority, as if she were a queen that overlooked the mortal world. Her entire body turned illusory at this point. Only the golden flares on her left arm still remained as bright and blinding as ever. At this instant, Everyone watching this fight was praying in their hearts. They were praying for the goddess in their hearts. No one hoped that Zhao Yang would win, splat. Just as both parties were about to clash, Zhao Yang's left hand blew apart. The intense pain instantly diminished the might of his dark golden terror palm. Zhu Zi also rushed over at this point. She was much calmer than Wang Dong. After all, she had experienced such a situation before. She retrieved a medicinal bottle and shouted to Wang Dong, "Lie him down on your legs. There's no point in crying. Saving him is the important thing now, yes." Wang Dong's voice was trembling. He took in a deep breath and gritted his teeth. He allowed his tears to stream down. He sat on the ground first before laying Hu Yuhao down carefully on his legs. Zhu Zi passed the medicinal bottle to him and said, "I'll clean the wounds while you scatter the powder on them. It'll help stop the bleeding." Wang Dong said, "Let me clean the wounds." He had calmed down at this point. Compared to Zhu Zi, he was familiar with Hu Yuhao. He knew that Hu Yuhao's recuperative abilities were very strong. While his injuries were critical, he wasn't in any real danger. He was unwilling to let someone else treat Hu Yuhao, as he didn't trust her. Zhu Zi was furious. "Are you going to fight me on this?" Wang Dong lifted his head and glared at her. He shouted, "Let me do it." Zhu Zi was shocked when she heard him. She was surprised that Wang Dong's voice was crisper and even more harmonious than her own. For some reason, she didn't persist. Wang Dong's hands were already moving swiftly, and his 10 fingers shone with dim golden light, displaying his great dexterity. He managed to quickly remove all the dirt from Hu Yuhao's back and stitched up his wounds. Then the bleeding was stopped. Zhu Zi was silent as she opened the medicinal bottle and scattered the powder on Hu Yuhao's wounds. There was one thing in common between her and Wang Dong. They were both crying. Wang Dong had to wipe his tears off several times with his sleeves to keep his vision from blurring. However, some of his tears still dripped onto Hu Yuhao's mangled body. Different scenes played out in their minds. Zhu Zi thought of how Hu Yuhao had saved her in the Jingyang mountain ranges, and how he looked when he was grilling meat, whereas Wang Dong recalled how Hu Yuhao had pulled him into his arms just after the raiment of light ended. As the two of them crashed to the ground, Hu Yuhao's eyes were filled with resolve even though he was in pain. He did his best to prevent them from switching positions, bearing the brunt of the attack himself with his body. The war had ended, the rebel troops were exterminated. The Empire's army completed the encirclement, with the mountain that Hu Yuhao and the rest were on at the center. Right now, the Soul Engineers remained standing even though they were all extremely fatigued. None of them sat down to rest. They all looked in Hu Yuhao's direction, who was pale and unconscious on the ground. They were watching Wang Dong as he treated Hu Yuhao. All of them knew that they would have died on the battlefield if not for the two of them. They were their benefactors. Wang Dong and Zhu Zi finally completed their treatment of Hu Yuhao. They looked into each other's eyes and saw relief within them. Zhu Zi moved over to and squatted down beside Wang Dong. She whispered something in his ear. Wang Dong's body stiffened up, and he twisted his head to look at Zhu Zi. Finally, he nodded his head determinedly. Zhu Zi shut her eyes and took in a deep breath. She said, "I know." Wang Dong didn't look at her again, but lifted Hu Yuhao's arms onto his shoulders before carefully lifting him. When Hu Yuhao regained consciousness, he discovered that he was in a huge tent. He was in a prone position. Then he saw a handsome sleeping face with tear stains beside him. Intense, prickling pain could be felt on his back, causing Hu Yuhao to recall everything that had happened earlier. He revealed a self-deprecating smile on his face. "Who did my back offend? Why is it always the thing that gets hurt? It seems like I'll have to create something to protect my back the next time I create soul tools." He shut his eyes, and the battle that had ensued earlier replayed itself in his mind. As he recalled what had happened, he soon realized that something went wrong. They were very fortunate to have won. After the Goddess of Light struck, they were out of fighting strength. They were only able to win because Zhao Yang wasn't familiar with them. Their martial soul fusion skill and soul skills played very important roles. However, they could have won easily. That was because Hu Yuhao was also a Class 6 Soul Engineer, in addition to being a Soul Master. However, he forgot about his identity as a Soul Engineer when he teamed up with Wang Dong in that battle. He made a huge mistake. "It seems like I'm still a Soul Master at heart." Hu Yuhao sighed. He also realized his lack of abilities compared to an advanced level Soul Master. Hu Yuhao had always believed that he could challenge a 7-ringed Soul Sage if he could beat a 6-ringed Soul Emperor. However, this battle was a huge blow to him. He knew he'd been arrogant as of late, because he was too used to winning. Yes, he had beaten many 5-ringed and 6-ringed Soul Masters in the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. However, they were soul engineers and not soul masters. Soul engineers were indeed explosive and destructive. However, teacher Wang Yang's words were the most accurate. In the future, the strongest soul masters would be equipped with the best soul tools. That was the only way he could truly become strong. The Sun Moon Imperial Soul Academy had also realized this point. That was why Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen had appeared. The higher-level opponents he had beaten were either soul engineers or soul masters. In reality, he was a combination of soul master and soul engineer, which gave him an advantage. To put it into perspective, would he able to defeat his eldest and third senior if they were equipped with the best soul tools? I'm only a soul ancestor. Yu Hao, are you awake? Wang Dong lifted his head, but he was still a little hazy. Hui Yu Hao twisted his head to look at him. I can't sleep forever, now can I? Did you cry? No. Wang Dong was completely awake now, and replied loudly. Hui Yu Hao laughed, all right, of course you didn't. You're a man though. A man can bleed but not cry. Don't cry so much in the future. Don't you know that I am stubborn? How can I be killed off so easily? Wang Dong rolled his eyes at him. You're already in this state. What's there to brag about? How are you? Hui Yu Hao laughed bitterly. Of course I'm suffering. Wang Dong revealed a look of heartache. Why were you so foolish to bear the attack by yourself? Hui Yu Hao chortled. I couldn't let you bear this pain. Look at your tender and delicate skin. Mine's all old and thick compared to your skin. Don't worry, I'm fine. But you look quite fatigued. Let's circulate our power, all right. Wang Dong nodded and initiated the Haodong power to complement Hui Yu Hao's circulating soul power. Hui Yu Hao said, you're a little too weird like this. Get up. As he spoke, he shifted a little to the side. However, he accidentally strained the wounds on his back, and was suddenly struck by immense pain. Don't move. I can do it myself. Wang Dong stopped him. He didn't think too much, and laid beside Hui Yu Hao. Hui Yu Hao was prone and his head was to one side. Wang Dong had no choice but to lie on his side since this place was narrow. He grabbed onto Hui Yu Hao's hands and initiated his soul power. Hui Yu Hao suddenly laughed. Wang Dong sensed the aura from him, and a dim red glow appeared on his face. What are you laughing at? Hui Yu Hao chortled, nothing. I just think it's a little weird that we're looking at each other like this. Wang Dong, what's weird? I'm not even despising your small eyes yet. Hui Yu Hao laughed. I'm not looking down on your long eyelashes either. But they are so long that they are going to brush across my face, you. Wang Dong's eyes opened wider, and he was in a daze as he stared at Hui Yu Hao. Wang Dong didn't get back at him, but only said furiously, on account of your injuries, I won't beat you. Circulate your soul power quickly. You're already in this state, and you're still joking. I can only speak like this with you. Hui Yu Hao said leisurely. As he spoke, he shut his eyes and circulated his soul power. Wang Dong made a clown face at him before shutting his eyes too. He circulated his soul powers too. Neither of them realized that someone was watching quietly from a slit in the opening of the tent. Wang Dong and Hui Yu Hao cultivated all the way until night fell. Hui Yu Hao managed to recover significantly via his shocking recuperative abilities. While his injuries weren't completely healed, he was at least able to move now. It was just that he couldn't move around too actively. When he saw Juzi again, Hui Yu Hao could sense that she was exhausted. She came with cuckoo and even brought a huge box of food. 8 dishes, 1 soup, 2 piping bowls of rice. The dishes were very exquisite, and didn't seem that they could be whipped up from the mush commonly found in the military. How's your body? Juzi asked Hui Yu Hao. For some reason, Hui Yu Hao could clearly sense that she was concealing her emotions. There seemed to be a veil covering her body. Hui Yu Hao replied, I can move freely. Do you still think there's anything wrong with my body? Juzi glanced at Wang Dong beside Hui Yu Hao and nodded. As long as you're all right. You should eat while the food's hot, it's not nice when it cools off. It's getting late, I'll visit again tomorrow. The higher-ups in the military wanted to thank you personally, but I considered your identity and rejected them for you. It avoids unnecessary trouble this way. Thank you, Hui Yu Hao replied sincerely, we only fought to help you and Cuckoo, not for the Sun Moon Empire to quell this rebellion. It's best that we don't meet them. Juzi said, yes. Enjoy your meal, we'll take our leave first. She forced a smile at Hui Yu Hao before she made for the exit with a heavy heart. Tugged at Juzi's sleeves, but she just shot her a glare. Cuckoo was typically straightforward and casual, but she seemed a little meek as she stuck her tongue out and followed Juzi away. Hu Yuhao watched their shadows disappear into the distance. He was a little confused as he muttered, "Why doesn't it feel like we saved them, but like we offended them instead?" Wang Dong smiled and said, "Can't you tell? She really likes you and feels very conflicted. However, she's the prince's consort, so you must be careful. Don't drag me down with you if something happens." Hu Yuhao snapped, Eat. Stop spouting nonsense." He felt a little down when he saw the expression on Juzi's face, and he almost wanted to stop her to ask about it. However, he remembered that Juzi was the crown prince's fiancée, and their paths ahead were destined to never intersect, so he had to swallow his emotions. It was better this way, so that he wouldn't cause any trouble when he was supposed to let go and didn't. This sentiment was similar to what Juzi had said when she sobbed beside his bed, "We should never meet again." Both he and Juzi recognized the unsurmountable rift between them, and they understood it was best that they didn't interact too much. The food was delicious. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were a little astounded. 4 meats and 4 vegetables dishes, and they were all warm. It definitely wouldn't have been easy for them to put together a meal as sumptuous as this within their military camp. The soup was thick and rich, and Hu Yuhao knew with his experience in cooking that this was a taste that could only be achieved after prepping the food for an entire day. Wang Dong found the food delectable, but Hu Yuhao could taste more than that. Even though Juzi didn't say anything to him, Hu Yuhao could taste many different things in this meal. Out of the 8 dishes, 3 were sour to varying degrees, 2 were sweet, and the rest were bitter, spicy and salty. He could taste a mix of 5 different flavors in a simple meal, with an emphasis on sourness and sweetness. She was the daughter of a renowned chef, so she was surely able to make these dishes the way she intended. There was a similarly large tent not far from Hu Yuhao, and Wang Dong stared at Juzi with a confused look on her face. "Why are you acting so weird today, Juzi? Are you?" Juzi shook her head softly. Cuckoo dashed to the entrance and poked her head outside. She made sure that nobody was nearby before she darted back beside Juzi and whispered, "Have you really fallen for Hu Yuhao?" Juzi glanced at her, but she still said nothing. However, Cuckoo knew the answer from the look in Juzi's eyes. "Since you like him, why did you leave back then? Why did you have to agree to marry the prince?" Juzi answered plainly, "You don't understand. There are some things that I cannot decide. My life has been drastically changed ever since my parents passed away. Emotions like these shouldn't even be appearing in me." Cuckoo glared at her and said, "Then why did you work so hard to make his food?" Juzi said, "I'm just trying to repay him for saving my life." Cuckoo raised her voice a little and said, "No, that's absolutely untrue. It's been a very long time since I've seen you so focused. When you were cooking for him, your entire aura felt different. It wasn't just focus in your eyes, I saw warmth and tenderness." Juzi shuddered. "You're talking too loud. Do you want the entire camp to hear you?" Cuckoo softened and said, "Don't be so hard on yourself, Juzi. What's the point?" Juzi smiled, but there was a tinge of sadness in all that beauty. "You wouldn't understand. Did you really think I'm suitable for him? Have you forgotten that I'm older than him by a few years? What kind of person is he, and what kind of person am I? You already know my status. I'm just one of the prince's chess pieces, and a chess piece that will be completely destroyed until it can't be used. All I can do is play my part as a chess piece. Do I have to drag him into this mess?" Cuckoo leaned in beside her ear. "But you can run away." The night went by in silence. In the early morning, when the sun first peeked out from the eastern horizon, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were standing outside their tent. They faced eastwards as they inhaled and exhaled the dawn's purple energy. The purple demon eyes relied on consistent accumulation. Hu Yuhao revealed the strongest characteristics of his body. Over just one night of cultivation, the flourishing life energy in his body had caused the wounds on his back to scab over. He was in a daze for a day and a night from when he was injured before he awoke, and that meant that only 2 days had gone by. His regenerative ability could only be called unprecedented, utterly extraordinary, and never to be duplicated. The purple energy dissipated as Wang Dong asked, "Yuhao, I'm not very comfortable here. We are ultimately in someone else's territory. Can you walk?" Hu Yuhao said, "It's not a good idea to remain here for long, as I'm unwilling to interact with the Sun Moon Empire's military too. I will be fine. It's a pity that my flying type soul tool is broken. If not, activating and controlling it wouldn't have been a problem." Wang Dong asked, "When do we leave?" Yu Hao answered, I will bid my farewells to Juzi and Cuckoo after breakfast, and then we'll leave. Wang Dong studied Hui Yu Hao's face solemnly. He could tell that there wasn't a forced look in Hui Yu Hao's eyes at all, and the smile on his face became wider as he said, all right. Cuckoo delivered breakfast this time. It was much simpler compared to the previous night's feast, consisting of steamed buns, salted vegetables, porridge, and sauced meat. The meal was simple, but sufficient. We only have this stuff left in the camp. Cuckoo said a little apologetically. Hui Yu Hao laughed. We aren't privileged commoners used to living like royalty. A full stomach is enough for us. When I was young, I couldn't even find bread to fill my stomach sometimes. How can I be picky with a fragrant and enormous white steamed bun? He started munching on a steamed bun that was almost the size of his palm as he spoke. Formidable life energy was one thing, but life energy also needed replenishment, and food was the optimal choice for that. Wang Dong had a lot gentler eating mannerisms compared to Hui Yu Hao. He pushed more food in front of Hui Yu Hao, spread open a steamed bun, and placed the marinated meat inside before he ate. Cuckoo sat to one side. She seemed to have already eaten breakfast, so she didn't touch the food at all, but Cuckoo didn't leave either. Part 1 end here.